I am stressing this. Rajiv Gandhi had been on holiday in the Andamans when General Sundarji and our Minister of State for Defence, Arun Singh, started ratcheting up the tension with Pakistan. A Pakistan which had got extremely worried over what our real intentions were when we were pretending to do a military exercise, but which could easily convert itself into an attack. And when Rajiv returned from the Andamans, he called me in and he said, you know, Mani, we are almost at war with Pakistan. I said, what? Why? So he said, well, Sundarji and Roon have done what they can. And now what I have to do is to end this confrontation. Then I get back to you. And a few minutes later he rang me. And he said, what do you think we should be doing to end this tension? And I said, so the obvious and only way of doing it is for you and Zia will have to get together. But the problem is that Zia has been to India 5 times. And it's your turn, therefore, to go across to Pakistan. But if in present circumstances you were to fetch up in Islamabad, then there'd be an unholy row in India, which you would have to be defusing, and it would distract attention from the attempt to defuse the India-Pakistan tension. So I said, maybe what you could do is to arrange to meet him in Lahore, or for him to meet you in Amritsar. Maybe we could do it at lunchtime. And Rajiv said, well, let's see what can be done. I'll ring Zia, but just remain where you are. So I continued at the desk where I was. And about 5 minutes later, he rang back and said, you're completely wrong. I asked Zia whether he'd like to come across to Delhi, and he said, I'm coming immediately. And Humayun was there. He was the note taker. He was the only one allowed to be present in the conversation. But that is the extent to which Indian civil politicians and Pakistani military dictators have in the past dealt with each other. And although General Pervez Musharraf's coup was almost universally looked at with deep disapproval and suspicion in India, coming as it did in the wake of Kargil 1999, eventually it was under his aegis that the composite dialogue made more progress on the Tariq Lamba back channel than at perhaps any other stage of India-Pakistan relations. And I'm delighted that High Commissioner Aziz has confirmed this before you, that there really was progress, and that it included progress on Kashmir. Equally, of course, the Nehru-Liaquat Pact of 1950, the Shimla Agreement of 1972, and the Lahore Declaration were the handiwork of civilian governments. And perhaps to this I should add the Islamabad Declaration of January 2004, which set in train the process which came to almost a climax under Dr. Manmohan Singh and General Pervez Musharraf later. All these were the handiwork of civilian governments in Pakistan. I also salute the present government of Pakistan for the decisive moves being made towards placing trade between the two countries on a most favored nation footing, a move warmly welcomed by the business communities of both countries. Perhaps we could still become each other's sabse pasandida mulk. Here, I do not think the objective record makes for any insuperable difficulty in India dealing directly either with the Pakistan military or in dealing with the civilian government that has the military breathing down its neck, or in dealing with the civilian government that stands up for itself, as appears to be the case increasingly now. In any case, recent developments point to a new emerging equilibrium between the civilian authority and the military in Pakistan. And we certainly hope, as I think all Pakistanis, including those in the armed forces do, that Pakistan stabilize as a democratic polity under an elected political authority. On the other hand, the regrettably widespread view in Indian circles that Pakistan is a failed state or a failing one also needs to be countered. I do not think any nation, let alone Pakistan, which is so firmly anchored in history, civilization, ideology, and spiritual belief as is Pakistan, with one of the largest populations in the world, even if relative to India somewhat small, with the high degree of political and philosophical sophistication which one encounters in this country at every turn, and not only in the Jinnah Institute. A resilient economy and a burgeoning globalized elite, a strong bureaucracy and a stronger military, and an extremely lively and informed media can possibly be a pushover. I don't think there's any possibility at all of Pakistan becoming a failed state. Pakistan, 6 decades after its foundation, is no wartime Afghanistan, swirling in chaos at the time of the Soviet and American withdrawal and the political vacuum that followed the end of its socialist phase, and thus sucked inexorably into the vortex of religious extremism, assiduously being egged on from outside. Yes, Pakistan has its difficulties, but so do we in India. So any strategy that is built on the assumption that Pakistan cannot hold its own is misconceived, misplaced, and dangerously misleading. Equally unrealistic are doomsday prophecies of Pakistan falling into the maw of fanatical terrorists or disintegrating irretrievably into a congeries of nations. Pakistan is here to stay, and it will be best to deal with it on those terms. While of course it's the duty of the intelligence community, ISI or RAW, to conjure up far-fetched scenarios and prepare for them, statesmen are required to handle the here and now. And that calls for an engagement with a Pakistan that will last and not a Pakistan on its last legs. That accounts too, in my view, for no one in India harboring any illusions anymore about a return to Akhand Bharat. That was a slogan in the immediate post-partition period. As much of a slogan as Kal Sham Tak Islam Ka Jhanda Lal Kile Par Lehrayega. These are all futile thoughts of the past. At that time, it was a slogan in the immediate post-partition period because it was a cry from the heart of those who had been deprived of their hearts and their homes. That generation has gone. The refugee in India is well integrated into Indian society. Indeed, I am one of them. For I was born in Lahore and went across. Well, I went across earlier, but my father only quit on the 17th of August. So the refugee is now well integrated into Indian society, and there's no nostalgia for return, except perhaps in the fading memories of some 80 to 90-year-olds. Moreover, what on earth are we going to do with 18 crore seriously angered malcontents if ever anything so stupid happened as the end of Pakistan? No, there is nothing at all to be gained by promoting any disintegration of neighboring Pakistan. And I would advise any Pakistani who doubts us, there are some, on this score, to consider how steadfast a series of Indian governments of every hue and color were in standing up for the unity and integrity of Sri Lanka through 30 years of a vicious civil war caused by gross discrimination against the Tamil minority, despite the strong ethnic bonds that bind the Sri Lanka Tamil to the Indian Tamil. There being no insuperable institutional obstacles to a sustained Indo-Pak effort to resolve simmering differences, let us now turn our attention to those differences which, for convenience, I have divided into the endemic and the episodic. The endemic issues between India and Pakistan are, from a Pakistani perspective, Kashmir and water. And from an Indian perspective, doubtless it is cross-border terrorism based in Pakistan. I have no ready-made answers. I doubt that anyone has. But is that cause enough to despair of any solution ever being found? The historical record would appear to disprove any military solution to the argument over Jammu and Kashmir. The attempt to annex the Maharaja state, when the Maharaja and Sheikh Abdullah were ready to throw their lot in with India, failed. So did Operation Gibraltar. So did the attack on Akhnoor that followed. As did the hostilities on the Western Front in 1971. As did the Kargil misadventure. As did the proxy war of the 90s. And while there are those in India who maintain that the war of 1948 should have been pressed forward to a conclusion, I think Pandit Nehru was sensible in listening to wise circums. There is no military solution, and subversion will not work. On the other hand, is George or possible? The United Nations, once the forum for grand forensic battles between Krishna Menon and Firoz Khan Moon, and earlier with Zafrullah Khan, and later Zulfikar Ali Bhutto and Swaran Singh, has in effect, that is the United Nations has in effect, washed its hands of the issue. The question of Jammu and Kashmir remains on the UN agenda, but lies dormant ever since India and Pakistan agreed at Shilla in July 1972 to discuss bilaterally all issues related to J&K. Notwithstanding the naysayers, and there's no dearth of them in either country, progress has been made. These issues are an integral part of the composite dialogue initiated in 1997. And to go by available records, and the confirmation we just heard from High Commissioner Aziz Ahmed Khan, a framework for resolution had reached an advanced stage under the aegis of President Musharraf and Dr. Manmohan Singh through the Sati Lamba Tariq Aziz back-channel talks. There was agreement in principle on no exchange of territory or populations, and working instead towards rendering the line of control irrelevant by promoting cross-border travel and trade and facilitating the reunification of divided families and friends. Issues related to Jammu and Kashmir are not as intractable as they were once believed to be. Even if that progress is not being acknowledged now, it does seem feasible to hope that the resumption of upfront and back-channel contacts might yet move matters further forward, even on Jammu and Kashmir. As for waters, both drought and floods are on everyone's mind. Water is a most serious issue between upper and lower riparians, whether within nations or between nations. As witnessed the contentious issues of watersheds between Punjab and Sindh in Pakistan, or between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu in India, or the question of the diminishing waters of the Indus Basin. We will have to find answers in 21st century technology, not in the polemics of the 20th century. The total availability of water has run so low that where India and Pakistan started in the 1950s with a per capita availability of per annum of water of about 5,000 cubic meters, water availability in both countries has since declined to under 2,000 cubic meters. In Pakistan, rather more sharply than in India, down to about 1,200 as against India's 1,800. The problem of water shortage is common to both of us. Indeed, it's a global problem common to virtually every country in the world. Some would call it the most important universal challenge of our times. But Israel has shown the way to the conservation of water through drip and sprinkler irrigation. I imagine that it is in such technology, rather than in the 19th century technology of large dams and command area channels, that the answer lies. And where differences persist, joint examination of data, where required on the ground, is required to keep the spirit of cooperation and goodwill alive, even as technical solutions are found to technical problems. And as in the India-Pakistan case, Pakistan experts come to their conclusions without consulting the Indian counterpart. And Indian experts come to their conclusion without consulting Pakistan counterparts. And as both technology has moved up, as well as the problem of just the availability of water in the basin, we have a situation where there is much more need for joint examination of the issues on the ground, joint examination of the data, perhaps even joint generation of the data, and that would keep the political temperature down while trying to find technical answers. I commend to all of you an excellent article on the subject in the Hindu newspaper of 28 January 2012, which you can readily access on the journal's website by our veteran water issues expert, Ramaswamy R. Aiyar, no relative of mine, I hasten to add. But while technology may hold the secret, there is no denying the fact of water deprivation or the politics that flow from it. That is where the Indus Waters Treaty has proved its immense worth. The numerous mechanisms it has for finding acceptable ways of resolving agonized issues, as was demonstrated over Baglihar recently, and as is being demonstrated over Kishanganga now, are solid examples of India and Pakistan being able to discover forums of settlement in preference to the vapid aggravation of real problems and real issues. At the same time, creating bondage must take into account the availability of water at the required time in Pakistan. That was not done in the year 2009 and 10 and in the immediate past, and needlessly gave rise to a public outcry in Pakistan. I now turn to the Indian priority issue, terrorism. Till 9/11, cross-border terrorism was one of several subjects under discussion in our bilateral composite dialogue, notwithstanding the proxy war in Kashmir, nor the jihadi strategy of bleeding India with 1,000 cuts. The attack on our parliament on 13 December 2001 led to the armed confrontation of Operation Parikrama, but did not stall either the Agra Summit of 2002 or the Islamabad Declaration of January 2004, or the dramatic progress made between May 2004 and March 2007, when the going was even better. Meanwhile, the Al-Qaeda attack on the Twin Towers brought the American retaliation to the borders of Pakistan. Ever since, terrorism has become a global issue, perhaps the most important issue before the international community. In that war against terrorism, Pakistan willy-nilly has become a frontline state with horrific consequences for itself. No state has suffered as much from terrorism as Pakistan itself. I think there needs to be much wider appreciation in India than there is at present of how terrible is the daily threat of terrorism striking any day and anywhere in Pakistan, and therefore of how steely is the will of the Pakistani people to not let their country be taken over by suicide bombers and pathological killers. I do believe that while the Pakistan establishment might at one time have been complacent regarding terrorism directed at the West or terrorism directed against India, while being extremely vigilant against terrorism directed at Pakistan, there is now an increasing realization that all three networks are interconnected, and that therefore the counter-attack on terrorism has to be holistic, taking on all three components without distinction. Indeed, that is the message that came through in President Zardari's initial reaction to 26/11 in Mumbai. That brief flicker of hope of a joint India-Pakistan front against those undertaking, sponsoring, or abetting terrorism was snuffed out over the offer first made and then withdrawn to send the ISI chief to India to initiate a cooperative approach to the joint threat of terror. The subsequent standoff over the next 2 years was most disturbing. Now, there is once again a flicker of hope, as Pakistan's Judicial Commission is visiting India. I think they're reaching there tomorrow. And the anti-terrorism court in Rawalpindi can get down to trials in real earnest. I certainly hope that will happen, because bluntly speaking, the Indian establishment and almost all Indians remain unconvinced that India-directed terrorism is indeed seen in Pakistan as an unmitigated evil that must be stamped out. But I do believe only a joint strategy to counter terrorism will enable both India and Pakistan to overcome what in effect